So I came to the strangest realization while I was looking through some of my videos last night, and that was that I've never actually done a video specifically reviewing an Image Comics comic. And that's really weird because I've been, following a couple of Image series for a long time now. A lot of them are really, really good, and Image Comics is, in my opinion, probably the best of the bigger publishers out right now. There are of course, other good comics being published by other people like Boom Studios and stuff, IDWs, Cartoon Network Comics, that kind of thing. That's all good stuff, but from these kind of bigger companies, Image has definitely been kicking ass for a really, really long time now, and I know that's basically like saying 2 plus 2 equals 4, but it's true. It's really, really true. And their success is pretty damn undeniable. And since I'm kind of in a mindset right now where I just can't make myself care about anything Marvel or DC anymore. I mean, there are a couple books from the DC set that I still really like the New Direction with Batgirl, of course, and Omega Man, and then from Marvel, there's Silk, but that's more or less it, and I'm not really optimistic about the future of that stuff. And overall, I've just come to some realizations when it comes to Marvel and DC comics that just are unappealing to me, just on a lot of different levels. So I decided to check out Birthright. Now, this is a series that I've heard about a lot and seen a lot of throughout different, comic book related sites. I saw Comic Pop talk about it, but it was always one of those things where it looked interesting, but I could never really get in the mood to read it. And then a couple days ago, I finally just bit the bullet and decided to get it, read it through, and I pretty much plowed through the first 10 issues, which is roughly the first 2 volumes of the entire storyline. And I really gotta say, I'm disappointed that I didn't give this thing a chance sooner, because it's a really good deconstruction and combination of a lot of different storylines you've seen before, and it all really, really works. The basic gist of the story is that one day a father named Aaron takes his son Mikey out to the park to play some baseball while on their way home. His mom's preparing, a birthday party for him along with her brother Brennan, and everything seems really good and all until the dad throws the ball too far into the woods and Mikey goes after it. His dad tries to find him and he just vanishes off the face of the earth, which is a classic, story of, the parent losing the child, and then the child is transported to like a mystical other dimension a la Peter Pan, which is already showing you how it's combining different genres. And what's really cool about it is that the child doesn't immediately come back like he usually does in those storylines, nor is it a situation where the parents leave and then the kid goes on this big, grand adventure and then shows up just before the parents even know he went anywhere, and they probably never know the adventure he went on. But here, the parents immediately find out, and what happens next is pretty much what you would expect. There's a big search. It becomes this really big public event. There's searches all over the forest. People are organizing stuff. The media, trying to help the parents, and then the media turns on the father because he was the one there on the day he disappeared. The media saying, "Oh, he must have killed his son. He's, a complete sociopath." And then his wife starts believing what the media is saying. She divorces him. He becomes an alcoholic. And it's just this really, really sad and depressing situation that would realistically happen to the kind of family that this is. Now, when you first introduced to the family, you're going to think this is a perfectly fine family. They don't really have any problems, which isn't really the case. Later on, as the story progresses, and this is probably my favorite part of the whole series, the whole family dynamics thing, is that Aaron's father left him when he was really, really young. And so Aaron, when he, was a kid, he decided, if he ever has children of his own, he's going to treat them right. He's going to be like the best dad ever. And he actually really is kind of the best dad ever, from a kid's perspective. He, takes them to ice cream. He does really cool and fun stuff with them that the mom doesn't always agree with. But this also really creates a problem where Aaron is the cool guy. He's the cool parent. He's the guy who's going to do all the fun stuff with you. He's the guy who's going to give you like $5, or is going to give you a pat on the back if you do something wrong. And then the mom has to be the one who's always the quote-unquote bad parent, the one who has to scold them or spank them, the one who has to take all the responsibility for stuff. And it kind of shows you where this kind of resentment that's kind of festering under the surface kind of shows up with the wife and the dad, that just explodes when this whole thing happens and the marriage just goes to shit. And this is easily the best part of the book. And I'm always fascinated by storylines, about these kind of family dynamics where, and, especially with married couples, it's different between blood relatives. But I'm really interested when we see this kind of stuff happen to married couples, because I've always been kind of interested in the idea of, like, these people always say that they love each other, and they usually commit to these kinds of relationships, and, for a lot of times it works, a lot of times it doesn't, a lot of times it doesn't work, but the parents just stick with it because they feel that they have to for the sake of the children, or because they really wanted to make it work, or because they know that there are a lot of problems, but the pros outweigh the cons in their minds. But what I really, really like about these kinds of storylines is seeing how these relationships have these sort of issues burrowed beneath the surface, and how these kinds of tragic events really just unleash the demon inside everybody. I know I'm being overly dramatic in the way I'm explaining it, but I really find that fascinating. Like, these two people who met, who apparently really, really love each other, how they can just really grow to despise one another secretly, even if they don't realize it themselves until something like this happens, and how they turn on each other, and how two people who used to be really in love, who made a family together, can just completely grow to hate and despise one another. And I just find that stuff really, really interesting, and just the psychology behind all that. And I feel the storyline does a really good job of making the parents equally wrong in their approaches, because the dad has a very good reason for why he acts the way he does. It's explained very well. It's a very relatable sort of thing for a lot of people to understand with. And you understand why he's trying to be the cool dad, because he doesn't want to come off as like a loser, as a failure in the eyes of his family, but he takes it too far. And the wife realizes that he's taking too far, but she never really does anything about it. She never really confronts him, as far as we know, and she just lets the whole thing go on and go on and go on until this tragedy just spills everything over. And right from the get-go, it's a really depressing storyline. The dad becomes an alcoholic. His wife hates his guts. He starts hating her guts, because the second your loved one basically starts thinking that you would be capable of murdering your own child, the child you had with her, that's really just the point where I would also just stop loving that person. And then here's the twist. The son comes back as this Jason Momoa-esque Conan the Barbarian type fantasy badass who's like been killing trolls and dragons, and he's a fully grown man after only a year. And it's later explained that he, traversed into this alternate dimension, which is this crazy fantasy type world where he became the chosen one. But even this is taken in a sort of deconstruction. Even this is done in a deconstructive type way, where just because you embrace your destiny does not automatically mean that everything's going to work out fine for you. And this is something that Star Wars played with. People are going to argue whether or not it did it well. I personally think it was done okay, but it's definitely the most famous example of this, where you get this kid and you start telling him he's the chosen one. You start preparing him for whatever role some bullshit prophecy is made for him. And usually in these types of storylines, the person embraces their destiny. They embrace themselves as the chosen one. They become a better person. They get the hot chick. They become Mr. Badass McSteel or whatever, and they live happily ever after. But this storyline throws it on its head by having the kid be this very kind of moral-centered person. He doesn't want to kill people. He doesn't want to kill anything. He doesn't want to go to war. He doesn't want to see his friends get annihilated. He just wants to go home and be a regular kid. But because he is the chosen one and he's stuck here, he has to start compromising his own morals to become the chosen one. And it's a really cool dynamic where he's embracing his destiny, but it's kind of destroying him. He's turning into this really violent person who solves a lot of his problems with violence, with killing, who has very little regard for the lives of anything else except his closer family, and even that is kind of tested at times, and that's really, really interesting to me. And that's really those are pretty much the strengths of the whole storyline. It takes these stories you've seen done a million times before, for better or for worse. It manages to combine them in a really effective way, and it does it in a very natural way. Like, The parents aren't just one-dimensional, one-note type people who are just there to get some kind of point across about how bad it is to be the cool parent and how bad it is to be the responsible parent. They're not just two-dimensional archetypes. They feel like real people. And Mikey's brother, Brennan, who is kind of hinted at being the ignored child, seems to be the one who might actually be the chosen one, because he's the kid who's taking the high road. He's the kid who's sticking to his beliefs, and he's the kid who's proving himself to be the better of his brother. But even that later on gets thrown on its head, where you start thinking that maybe even that direction isn't the perfect way to go and could lead to a lot of problems. And then there's a lot more that happens in the storyline. There's plenty of action, really cool fantasy stuff. I'm happy that the fantasy world itself isn't just some by-the-numbers cliche copy of Tolkien's world. There's no elves or dwarves. There are trolls, of course. There are dragons. But it deals with a lot of these different kinds of spirits. It has full-on weird mage-type dudes. The spirits are pretty damn interesting in the way that they serve good, but they have no morals about it. So if like an evil dragon shows up at a city and the spirits gather to fight the dragon, they're going to annihilate everything in the city. They will do the quote-unquote good thing by any means necessary, and that's what makes them both a good ally and potentially very, very dangerous. And I don't really want to say anything else, because this is a very hard series to talk about in a way where I'm actually going to describe what happens in it. It has this kind of cool road trip feel at the end. It deals with a lot of different characters and different periods of time. There are a lot of flashbacks to both children as kids. There are flashbacks to Mikey's time in the fantasy world. And it all works. It all works to keep pushing that deconstruction element going. And I'm really interested to see where this is going to go. I'm kind of sad that I got into it relatively soon, because I feel like this is one of those storylines that's so good, I don't think I'm going to be able to wait for it to finish, especially because it feels like this could go on for a really, really long time. As I said before, this is a series that's relatively well known. I've seen a couple of videos about it. It's not being hailed as one of the best ones of Image Comics, unfortunately, but I definitely think that this and Deadly Class are some of my personal favorites thus far. So yeah, Birthright by Joshua Williamson. Check it out if you're looking for a good sort of mix between different types of storylines that feel very human but have really cool fantasy elements to them, and also are a deconstruction of the cliches and tropes of those genres all at the same time. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you later. Bye.